13.
Sorry, hope you're okay with that.
No, that's okay. So this is a 32-year-old female who's had type 1 since 2013. She works as a pharmacy tech, and her hours are 7 to 4 p.m. She had no prior education before coming to us, and we met her at a screening that we had at our hospital, and we're just sharing some information about wearing CGMs, and she was really interested. So she came to see me in December of 2021 for her first visit. She actually had been referred the prior January, but never called. We never had heard from her. So when she showed up to see me, she brought her meter, and her most recent blood sugar check was a month prior. So she really hadn't checked her sugar since November 5th, so it had gone about a whole month. She only checked her sugar about 4 days in November and 7 days in October. So we put her on a professional Libre, Freestyle Libre, so that's what this report is. And while she was wearing it for 2 weeks, she had been taking Lantus twice a day, 25 units around 6:30 in the morning. And then she was ordered to take 30 units at 10:30 at night. She also had a Humalog sliding scale that ranged from 2 to 8 units. So just looking at this AGP report, it's from December 1st to December 13th, and she did wear it for 13 days. It was active 100% of the time. Her average glucose down here was 282. Her glucose management indicator is the estimated A1C, and that was about 10.1%. The variability was high, 44.3%, and we know if that's above 36%, that they're at higher risk of hypoglycemia. On the right, we can see that 55% of her numbers were greater than 250, 20% were in the high range of 181 to 250, so that's 75% of her numbers were high, 23% in target, and 2% low. So as we know, the professional version of the Freestyle Libre is blinded. So she was just kind of going about her daily business wearing this when she brought it back to me. And then of course at the bottom, this quick look at the 2 weeks that she wore it, there's just a lot of high blood sugar. We got to flip the screen here, shoot. Here it is, right there. Okay. Oh no. We're trying to rotate this, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, usually that works. You could try going in the file.
Over here?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any choices up there. Maybe view. Sorry, go into view.
Okay. Sorry, everyone.
That's all right. Yeah, here you should be able to rotate. Yeah. That first one, rotate view.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so, and I had written some notes on some of these, so you can see that she takes her 25 units of Lantus at 6:30 in the morning, eats breakfast around 8 a.m. at work, and then will sometimes take the Humalog at work. So that's her biggest drop during the day, and she kind of hits the target range here for a little bit. She eats lunch around 1:30 at work, goes home and has dinner around 5 or 6, and has the 30 units of Lantus at night. But she did admit to me that she said she admits to missing a couple doses of the evening Lantus every week, and that she usually dosed her Humalog after breakfast when she would check her sugar if it was elevated. But as we know, she wasn't really checking a whole lot. Okay, so moving along here.
Sorry, did you say how much Humalog does she take at each?
Well, she was on a sliding scale typical of like 2 to 8 units. So the scale was, if her sugar before the meal was 150 to 180, she took 2, 180 to 210, 3, 211 to 244, 241 to 305, and 301 to 306 units.
Got it. Okay.
So really, or 301 to 356 units. Yeah. So I really don't think she was taking much at all of the Humalog just because she wasn't really checking a lot. I think this here was the Lantus that she took in the morning that brought her down to having some in target range. So
Is
I put
she
some,
also taking any non-insulin medications for diabetes?
no, she's type 1. They really,
Okay.
and she doesn't see an endocrinologist. She sees a primary care doctor. So here you can see her, if she did have any lows, it was probably when she took the Lantus. So what did I write over here? Her biggest drop in blood sugar was between 6 and 10 a.m. Might be due to taking the Lantus, 25 units at 6:30. Then if she took Humalog after breakfast. Patient states she occasionally misses her second dose of Lantus at 10:30. So these are the notes I wrote to the doctor also. Would benefit from once daily Traceba or Toujeo because there's, more likelihood that she's not going to take it twice a day. And especially being type 1, I think it would benefit her to be on the Traceba or Toujeo. And then let me flip this around. Oh no. How did that go? So that's the file, right? Oh, view. I'm sorry, view.
Yeah,
Thank
you go back to view and then rotate.
View.
Yeah, it's so weird. It won't let you change it with that other button. It's like misleading.
I know. Okay, technology. So we can see like on her daily view, look at her average glucose in the first column are all 250 to 300s. Does not have many in target, as we saw on the AGP report, like in the teens or 20%. Here she went low on Sunday, December 5th. If she felt that, I'm thinking she was high the rest of the night. I'm sure she didn't take any other insulin the rest of the night. She had another 80. This was 82 and 80 though. They weren't low, but for her, she probably felt low. So, and so on. So again, these are her meal times. So what else happened at this visit? So when she brought the Libre Pro sensor, we downloaded it and I went through it with her. And then we talked about, the options and what might be able to help her, like switching from twice a day Lantus to Toujeo or Traceba. We also talked about, and she agreed that set doses of Humalog might be best with her because when she's at work, she doesn't always have time to check her sugar. And at least if she had a set dose, she would just take that dose and cover the meal. So I had sent a letter to her, faxed it over to her physician, and they did end up ordering Toujeo, but she didn't start it till the end of the next download. So I'm trying to see if I have any other notes. Oh, at this visit, she was trained on the Libre 2. So at this visit, she started her own personal Libre 2. So we're going to see what happened now with the next report. Okay, so we can see at the top here now, it says Freestyle Libre 2. And she wore this one from December 31st to January 13th when I saw her, and we downloaded it. So at this time, for most of this report, she is taking the Lantus twice a day, 25 in the morning, 30 at night. On the very last day of this report, she started Toujeo 55 units. She was just still dosing the Humalog after breakfast because now she can scan, and she would take her Lantus in the morning. She would eat breakfast at work and then scan her sugar and see that it was high and dose after breakfast. She would then drop before lunch and would not take any Humalog at lunch because of dropping. She said if she followed the sliding scale, a lot of times pre-meal, she didn't need any insulin according to the sliding scale. So that's why she wasn't taking it before the meal. So if we look at this AGP report, her average sugar is now 153. Her A1C is lovely at 7%. But look at her variability, 52.1%. On the right side, she's no longer 75% of her numbers are no longer high, but she's down to 32%, which was wonderful. Her target range went up to 59%, but her lows were 10%. So she's having a lot of lows here. So we can.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
after the initial report, and then she got the Libre 2. Did anything, I know it sounds like she switched to Toujeo. Did any of her mealtime insulin change, or was it still like the same scale?
They didn't address the mealtime at all. So all she had was that Humalog scale. And she did not start the Toujeo till the last day of this report. So really for most of the report, what we want to look at is, was she taking her evening dose of Lantus?
And then prior, so with the professional CGM, she couldn't see her readings those 14
Right.
days. So how often was she checking with finger sticks?
So, right. So she was, oh, are you saying with finger sticks?
Yeah, in the original, like when she was wearing the professional, because she wouldn't have been able to dose off of those readings because she wouldn't have seen them. So how
Correct.
often was she checking?
She was not checking a lot. She was checking not at all. I mean, she just wore it. And yeah, she wasn't checking much at all.
So then she essentially was barely giving any Humalog because she
Right.
didn't know how much
Right.
to give. Okay. So
Right,
that's
exactly.
interesting, just going from not seeing the data to seeing the data. She, I mean, already was able
Huge.
to make such a huge difference. But the thing is, it's like so clear from that first report that you showed that like she was over basalized. I mean, she was dropping every night. It like makes me wonder too, because I think on there you have that like she snacks at night. If she felt like
Well,
she snacked to keep
if you look back though, look at her at night. She wasn't though. It wasn't till 6 in the morning when she took the Lantus here that she would drop. It was after the Lantus. She was high every night. Look at these nights.
Yeah, but the fact that it drops like that every night indicates that she's over basalized. Like there's no like Lantus, the onset,
I see.
you know, it doesn't work instantaneously. And typically
Right.
it, you know, you'd expect it's going to be fairly level. She was taking it twice a day, so it should be like fairly level in her body. So when we see like such a dramatic drop like that, usually it's that they're on too much long-acting insulin, which makes sense because she's not really taking Humalog. She's barely taking any. So she's basically on this higher dose of Lantus to try to make up for not getting enough
Right.
Humalog. I mean, to your point, definitely like at that kind of 6
Right.
to 8 a.m., it is dropping more. But clearly, yeah, she's just on too much long-acting insulin. Yeah.
So even looking at this, she's better during the day. Again, you can see the drop here at night. But in the evening, she's going high again. So I don't know, Diana, if you have anything to talk about with the 2 weeks here.
Well, it looks to me like she's still, I mean, it sounds like it's a little lopsided in terms of how much long acting compared to mealtime. But what I see here is that she clearly, now that she could see her readings, she's like, oh yeah, I need some mealtime insulin. I'm going to give it to myself. And I think it looks to me like there's a bit of a timing issue maybe too of, okay, you know, make sure you get the insulin before you start eating versus you know, taking it once you've already seen it go up, because then you're kind of playing catch up right there.
And part of the problem here is that she wasn't dosing before the meal because she would scan before the meal and maybe she was 140, so the sliding scale said don't take anything. But then after the meal, her sugar would be elevated and she would take the Humalog after the meal. And that's why, right.
And so a very active approach. So yeah, it sounds like she needs some set doses before the meals.
So I ran into her before we even did this download, and she was so excited to tell me how much this was helping her. It was really nice. Like she was just so happy. So even just wearing it and her being able to have these new set of eyes to see what her blood sugar was doing was helping her. So at this visit then, we actually came up with an insulin to carb ratio. So this is the thing. Her primary is over in like our clinic with our residents. And I mean, what we said was she wanted to she was counting carbs. She was able to count carbs. So I said, why don't you we figured out an insulin to carb ratio that she was able to use 1 to 10. Her doctor was okay with that. So she started doing that instead of the sliding scale for the next visit. And then she was on to JO 55 units. So let me.
So that's so interesting. So she felt comfortable that she could count the carbohydrates of her food?
Yeah, like she was doing good with the labels. We had the food models out. So she wanted to try that, like kind of figuring out what she was eating and to count the carbs. Let me go down here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Of course.
I have somebody similar to this, and I was really confused about it too. He has type 2, and he also has a sliding scale starting at 18 units of the Novolog. But what he's seen is that even if he does take his sliding scale units, his sugars are way high anyway, almost like the sliding scale's not enough, or there's something else going on. I'm not adept enough to know exactly what else is going on. I talked to my pharmacy son-in-law, and he's saying that he thinks the basal amount is probably not enough for him right now. But is it normal to use a sliding scale, or is that the carb counting a little more accurate for somebody who's taking boluses?
I can take that on
Go ahead.
if you want. So generally, like what gives you the most accuracy would be having a carbohydrate ratio, because that allows a person to, if they're eating different amounts, they're eating more carbohydrates or less, that they can really tailor that dose according to how much they're eating. Now, that being said, carbohydrate counting is really not for everyone, because it involves the skill of having to count the carbohydrates, the effort of having to look things up, and really to be like really accurate with it. Like, yeah, you have to look things up. Like, you technically may need to weigh your food at times. And so it's not the easiest thing. And so for people, especially that may be more consistent with what they eat, we may give them set doses at their meals. Now, going back though to the sliding scale, a lot of times we call it a sliding scale, but really what we're talking about is more a correction factor, where we say, okay, you take whatever your usual dose is, but if the glucose is above the target, you can add additional insulin to help bring it down. And so a very common one that we use is we call it sliding scale 2, where people can add 2 units for every 50 points over 150. So it's like if they go into a meal 150 to 199, they can add 2 units, 200 to 249, they can add 4. And so that would be added to whatever their base is. So in the example you provided, I'm not clear if the person's maybe doing 18 and then adding this scale to it. But what I would say is that if it's not bringing it down and the person's consistently high, then yes, it could be that there's not enough long-acting insulin. Because if you go into a meal high, pretty much you only have one way to go. It's going to go higher, and it's going to be hard to bring it back down enough. So it could be the long-acting insulin, or it could be the base dose just needs to be a little higher. One thing I really like to do is to look at the basal versus bolus, the ratio, because you usually, especially in type 1 diabetes, you're aiming for closer to 50-50. And that's why in this case, it's interesting, because in that first part where she wore the professional CGM, she's getting like 55 units a day of Lantus, and she was like getting almost no Humalog. I mean, let's say she was getting, even if she was getting 10 units a day, which I don't even think she was taking that much, it's really lopsided. We would have expected it to be much closer. So that's sometimes another way you can tell if they're getting enough or too much.
Okay, that gives me some good information. I don't think when you talk about the, I forget the words you use, I'm sorry, for
Insulin to carb ratio.
Well, no, when you, the correction factor,
Yeah.
are you saying that at each meal, some patients should have a base amount of the short acting, and then if they're higher, then they take more? Because I don't think he was taking any short acting at meals except according to that sliding scale.
Okay. So that's a very reactive approach to it. For some people with type 2 diabetes, it can work if they're generally like really well managed and they're on other medications that may be helping with their meal times. But for most people that require mealtime insulin, usually they need to take either some kind of set dose or they can follow a carbohydrate ratio. And then they would add the scale in addition to that if they go into the meal higher. When you only rely on the scale, then it can be pretty reactive because you're basically waiting for it to go high until you kind of do something about it.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. I appreciate you allowing me to butt in.
Oh, you're welcome. And that's what this is for. So please, ask all the questions that you have. I'm so glad you're asking. And it looks like Dawn No has joined us.
Oh,
And
great.
yeah, she posted in the chat. Also for people with type 2, the correction factor, aka sliding scale, may not work as well due to high insulin resistance. As Diana mentioned, they likely need more insulin or other medications, lifestyle changes to help decrease insulin resistance. So
yeah, he's got a lot of other issues going on, but the pharmacist I talked to, he's on, the guy is on 50 units of Tresiba, and I guess using the calculations that pharmacists do, he calculated him needing to be on 74. So, to me, that sounds like a huge difference, a huge gap of what he needs.
Right. And so in that case, usually what we do, you're right, we don't go like straight from 50 to 74, but what we might do is have the patient like increase by 2 units every 3 days until the fasting gets to goal. Or sometimes we'll increase, 10 to 20% every, once to twice a week, because we don't want to overshoot and end up, causing massive lows. But it does sound like, you want to generally titrate to get to that morning reading to be, in that target range of 80 to 130 for most people. Okay.
Yeah, my challenge is going to be, I don't work directly with his doctor. So, and the doctor is a family practice doctor. So somehow communicating with her that, something needs to be done. And he hasn't come back, and that's the other problem. But he says he will.
Well, hopefully he will. Yeah. Mariellen, it looks like your screen.
Yeah, I'm getting back on, so sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
I wasn't doing anything, so it was
sorry.
going to sleep.
Yeah,
Okay, so I know on these lows here, like she had 19 low glucose events. And even at night, there's still, I know there's more of them after breakfast, but she's still having some lows here at night. So, and it looks like she's wearing the sensor 90% of the time, and she's scanning 8 to 20 times a day. So she's definitely using it. But we're still having some issues now with the lows. So let me.
So yeah, that's amazing. She's clearly very engaged. And
Yes.
I give major kudos to that, because someone that went from not monitoring hardly at all is now super engaged and scanning very frequently. So that is awesome.
Oh gosh, sorry. I'm trying to straighten this
It's
out.
okay. I always pick the wrong way. Like,
Oh my gosh. Okay.
The wrong direction. Yeah.
So, right. So this, we can see her average sugar really came down. So this again is when she just first started wearing the Libre 2. Most of the time she was wearing this, remember, she's on the Lantus twice a day, 25 in the morning, 30 at night. And I think that's where some of these lows are coming in, like especially when she remembered to take the 30 units of Lantus at night. And this is also the time when she would give the Humalog after eating, because she would see her sugars going up and the sliding scale was not directing her to take it pre-meal. So then she was dosing later, and then she'd be busy at work and had taken insulin and would then have some of these lows. So here you can see it's pretty remarkable. I actually included some other parts of the report here. Let me go back to this. Okay, so look at this. These are all the times she's scanning, and the very dark numbers are the low sugars. So she's actually waking up in the middle of the night scanning here. So you can see all the lows going on. So definitely more on target, but definitely more lows. So this is just like here she is at work. Look at all these lows. And then the days she came to see me, let me see, was on 113. So that's this day. So she came to see me, and she had had breakfast that morning, and she was 129 before breakfast, so she did not give any insulin. She ate one muffin, and her blood sugar went up to 283. So she gave herself 10 units. This is before we talked about insulin to carb ratio, counting carbs. And she was with me when this happened. This was her visit. She dropped down in the 50s. So at 11 in the morning, she was 53 with the arrow down. Gave her a juice box, went down to 52, gave her another juice box, and these are 24-gram juice boxes. She then gave her a second juice box, came up to 93. So then she had a granola bar, and when she left me, her sugar was 103, and it was steady. So at this visit, again, just to recap, she was going to give 1 unit for every 10 carbs prior to the meal to try to avoid that, that elevated blood sugar post-meal. And she did put the Calorie King on her phone, so she was able to look things up, and she had a pretty good grasp of the carbs. So we had gone over a few things. So we were going to let her do that. All right, moving on to the next one. I have to rotate it again.
So, after that visit then, I know you mentioned switching to 2JO, but was anything else? I guess it was the same dose still, like the 55 of 2JO. Any other med adjustments?
No, just because she had just started the 2JO that last day. So that was brand new. And then she was going to do, start the insulin to carb counting with insulin to carb ratio. 1 unit for every 10 carbs. That was the plan.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned.
And I asked the doctor to order Baqsimi. We went over the different types of glucagon that, the choices that she had, and she wanted to have the Baqsimi.
Oh, that's
so
amazing. Awesome.
Yes, I did ask them to order that for her. Okay.
I like this poor woman who, wasn't checking, was going low all the time and had no glucagon at home. I feel like, oh my gosh. I'm glad she came to see you.
I am too. I'm so glad she came, right. So again, we can see at the top, this is the Freestyle Libre 2. It's her own personal device. When we downloaded it, we were looking at January 13th to January 26th. So she wore it for 14 days. The CGM was active 93% of the time. Her average blood sugar now is 175, and her A1C for those 2 weeks is predicted at 7.5%. But look at her variability was much improved, 38% versus 52% on the last download.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, so I would definitely take the, the estimated A1C going up a little bit to have that variability improve like that. That's amazing.
Right. And, I had to explain this to her because her target range went down. She was at 59 on the prior one. But I told her, I said, this is so much better because look at your lows are not 10%, but 4%. So that was so much better. And her highs went up a little bit. She now has 45%, and she was at 32%, but she's not having all the lows. And look at so much less variability down here. So it was better. So with this visit, let's see what we worked on. I gotta switch
And
this
also, I
up.
mean, the carb counting's new to her. So like,
It
you know,
is.
it's not going to be
Right.
perfect at, you know, the first time she starts carb counting.
Right, exactly. So, and like I said, still having hypos, but so much improved here. And maybe too with the Toujeo also helped a little bit because she's not taking that evening Lantus. So I'm hoping that that was also helping her. So what we noticed though is that she was still having some lows at lunchtime. I gotta rotate this. Gosh, I did do it the wrong way.
And then just a comment on the Toujeo, because so they went a 1-to-1 conversion, but usually Toujeo requires like, I don't know, 10 to 18% more a higher dose. So doing a 1-to-1 conversion is the right thing to do, but that actually might have helped her since she was getting too much long-acting insulin before, because it's an equivalent of a less dose.
Right. Yeah, I thought of that too. That was good for her. So if we look at these day-to-days, we can see this is the day she came to see me when she had the lows. That's when she ate the muffin and took 10 units for her 283, and it really dropped her. So moving on then, the plan, oh yeah, for this, okay, so let's look at these. So she's still dropping at lunch. Do you see these here? A lot of her lows are coming after lunch.
Right.
Let's look at the next screen. This was a good day, Thursday. She had a little gap in data there. Here's another low here. So what we decided was she was going to change the lunchtime insulin to carb ratio to a 1-to-15, and she's still going to try to keep that 1-to-10 with breakfast and dinner. Also, what we noted was that her sugars are usually more elevated at night, and she did say she's a big snacker at night. So I went over the snack list, like lower carb snacks that, you know, maybe would not raise her sugar so much at night. And then this is the last. Okay. So I think that's the last slide. And then just to update, she was supposed to come in and see me this week, but her mom recently had a stroke. So she's dealing with all this stress, and she lives with her mom. So I know she'll be taking care of her quite a bit, but so grateful that she came in to see us when she did, and that she has this Libre to help her. And I will be following up with her next week. So we'll get to see what's going on next week. So I don't know, Diana, do you have any other suggestions for this case?
Well, so did you confirm, is she typically dosing before she eats?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that's good about adjusting the carb ratio. I mean, I think like probably a big problem is the nighttime snacking and stuff. So I think that's good that you gave her options for lower carb, because I mean, as a person with type 1 diabetes, if she's, you know, eating carbs, she's going to have to give some insulin. Otherwise she is going to spike up a lot. So it would either be choosing things that are very low carb where she doesn't need insulin, or actually having, you know, giving more insulin at that time.
Okay.
And my fear would be when she starts doing that, or if she starts doing that, the long-acting insulin may need to be decreased because I think she's going into the night high. You know, she's generally going into the night high, and that's why she's been safe overnight with the switch to the Toujeo. But if she went into the night lower, like closer to 150, she might still end up dropping a bit overnight.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's good. I will, you know, I'm going to see her next week, so I'll see how that's going.
Awesome. I'm curious to other people's thoughts on this.
Mariellen, I'm sorry I came in late and I did hear that she has type 1, but I was curious if she's not on a smart pen by chance, is she?
No.
I wondered if that could be an option for her.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so there's the InPen through, I mean, there's really two options right now. There's InPen through Medtronic, and then there's Bigfoot Unity. InPen would be easier to get because it goes through just regular insurance, and for people that don't have insurance coverage, it typically, like they'll deny it and then you can just get it through Medtronic for $35 a year. But my only fear, or the only thing I would say with that is you have to assess, like, is she ready for a new, like we've just introduced this Libre, is she ready for another thing? Which I have to tell you, I recently had somebody who was really like, just struggling, and the idea of new technology was really very scary. And it was the first time I said, ooh, did I introduce something and maybe I shouldn't have, like it's overwhelming to her. But she actually did very well. And it was very easy to dose through her phone, through her mobile app. So I agree, it could be a great consideration for the future, but you might want to get her like really comfortable with this. And just also see how she feels about using other, tools.
Devices. Right.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share with Dawn the first report that we did that was blinded. It was the Libre Pro. And then, and she was on insulin twice a day here, but not really taking her evening dose of Lantus, not really taking much Humalog because she wasn't checking much and had a sliding scale. Whoops, sorry about that. So just showing like the improvement of even just getting a CGM and wearing it and being able to see her numbers.
Absolutely. It's amazing. I mean, that's part of why I'm just like, get everyone a CGM now. It's amazing.
Right.
Amy, did you have a question or a comment?
I was just curious, if you mentioned in the very beginning what her weight was. I was just curious with how much insulin, at least the basal, like just how that compares.
So when she first came to me, she was 179 pounds and 5'3". So let me see my BMI. And now she's 188 pounds. She's taking more insulin. Let's see, 179. So her BMI was 31.7 then. And let's see if, as far as her insulin goes, we can all pull out our calculators.
Right. She's like 81 kilos. I was wondering, that's a good question. I was wondering that too, like how much, insulin she's on for her body weight.
Yeah, she's well over a half a unit per kilogram for the basal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And like I said, she's just, seeing her primary. So that's, what they had her on. So.
Yeah. So now that you have more info, it would be also interesting if you could add up how much mealtime insulin she's getting now. Like a lot of times I'll ask how much, like understanding she's doing like the 1 to 10 carb ratio. Like I ask how much, do you estimate you're giving it, your breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then you could compare. And that's also like, that's a nice thing if you do use a connected pen, it calculates that for you and you can easily compare, but yeah.
I mean, it would probably be her, I don't think she's writing any of this down, her guessing and telling me, but yeah, the InPen would be nice.
So the other thing you could try too, like there's some apps like Sugarmate or Under My Fork, and there's probably others too, where people can just take pictures of their food. So if she wants to put her carbs in at the time or what she estimates they are, she could, but at least that way you could actually share the reports in there. So she could show you could see the pictures, and at least like you could estimate and kind of get an idea of how her carb counting is. And also, because I'm also curious, like how many carbs she's eating at her meals too. It just might help with the overall discussion. Yeah.
What was the first one?
Sugarmate. Yeah, that's one I use a lot. And then
is it
oh, sorry.
Is it MAI, like a maid cleaning your house?
No,
MAI?
mate. Yeah, MATE.
Oh, MATE. Okay, Sugarmate.
Yeah, and then Under My Fork. I'll put it in the chat too.
Okay, great.
Does anybody else have any other apps they like for like taking pictures or even
a little less intense, but kind of gets the job done, was an app I used to use called Track3. It essentially was the kind of equivalent of like an insulin pump calculator without wearing an insulin pump. So similar to like a smart pen in a way, the way it calculates doses. So she could put in her carbs, her insulin to carb ratio, her correction factor, and it would calculate the dose for you. So you don't have to do it all in your head.
Okay.
Oh, that's so cool. It's called Track 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't used it in like 3 years, but I used to have people download it, which I realize now, given all the FDA approval and doctor, prescriptions that you need to get insulin to carb ratios for pumps and smart pens, I just have people doing this kind of randomly on their own. But it's an app that's out there. You don't need, you don't need a doctor's approval to use it.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be the other thing too, is, still incorporating like a correction factor with the carbohydrate ratio. But that does require like a lot more math. So if you don't have like a connected pen, it's a lot to ask a person to do, but maybe through a use of like an app like the one Dawn mentioned, maybe that would be a possibility. I'm going to actually try to see if I can download that. I'm curious.
Yeah, see if it still works.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
I have a question about just the Bigfoot, the Unity pen. I don't have anybody that uses that, but it connects to the Libre 2.
It does. Yeah. So yeah, right. That's correct. Bigfoot Unity connects with Libre 2 versus the InPen can connect with either Dexcom or with Guardian sensor. The challenge with Bigfoot is that they're billing, their whole model to access it goes through remote monitoring. So it requires clinics to sign contracts with them. And there's a whole portal that you order it, you ship it out to the patient, and then it is billed through these remote monitoring codes. And so I can tell you for our institution, that model has been a challenge because to get through our IT and our legal department to use a system like that requires quite a bit of meetings and effort. And there's a lot of concerns about the data and, and the management. So that's been a challenge. And so unfortunately, that's not been something I've been able to offer my patients. And I think that's been a barrier to more people having access to it at this time. There's also sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So, Diana, I have a question on my patient. So now she's like 85 kilos. And if you calculate the basal out, it should be about 42 units of Toujeo. But I don't know. What do you think? Should she stay on this 55 or?
So I would add up how much how much bolus she's getting compared to how much basal. Because, what the guidelines say is that when someone's on more than 0.5 units per kilo, that's when you worry about over basalization. And so it's not like a hard and fast rule that you can't be on that much, but when it's higher than that, and especially when the ratio is so lopsided, and sometimes people will be on more basal because they just eat very low carbohydrate. But assuming like she is following more of a typical meal plan, you would expect it to be closer to 50-50. Yeah. I would not just like suddenly abruptly drop it a ton. I usually like to, again, kind of decrease in 10 to 20% intervals. Because also if you decrease the Toujeo too much, she's probably going to have a lot of highs and then she may get demoralized and stuff. So I think you've at least gotten her to a place where she is having a lot less lows. Plus she has the alarms now. So I think you're actually in an okay place, but probably what I could see happening over time is that you're going to need to decrease the Toujeo a little bit and ramp up the mealtime insulin a little bit more.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know with Toujeo, like needing more, but she might have been on too much to begin with.
Exactly. I think she was on too much to begin with because when I saw that first case, like the first thing I would have done is like decrease the long-acting insulin, So I think by switching to Toujeo, that essentially was done because we know usually you need more Toujeo to match the Lantus. Okay. So that's good. At least that was I think that helped.
And just to let you know that her A1C was 12.8%. Now they hadn't gotten one since January of 2021. But with the blood sugar numbers she showed me on her meter being in 2, 3, and 400s, it wouldn't surprise me if it was still that high. So hoping now that these estimated A1Cs are closer, to where she's going to be.
Absolutely. I mean, the last two reports, 7 and 7.5%. So that's amazing. I mean, you've helped her so much. So yeah, we would expect it's going to be way, way lower. So that's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing this case. It's actually, I thought it was a really, really good case. And I really like the progression to over time, like the same patient, but showing the different reports. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For doing that. And thanks everyone for attending. And we do plan to do this every month. So I'll try to send out the links in more advance. So we'll hopefully get more people to come, but I really appreciate everyone that did come. I think we had a really nice discussion, and I hope to see you next month and at our annual conference on Friday, April 8th in Columbus.
Yes.
All right. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Diana. Thank you.